This is The Spot, a BYU-Idaho radio production where we talk about what you're talking about at BYU-Idaho. The views and opinions of this podcast are not that of BYU-Idaho Radio or the university and are solely the opinions of the hosts. Today's hosts are
Megan Tomsik,
Cody Miller,
Maiya Waddell,
and I'm Savannah McCauley. Today we're talking about Magic the Gathering and video games. We are continuing our nerddom and talking about more nerdy and fun things.
Nerddom November for the win.
Yes, let's go. I like that a lot. So yes, we're talking today about video games and Magic the Gathering, which of course we can spend a whole episode on both of these subjects, but unfortunately we're going to have to share an episode for the two of them. We'll make it work. But we do want to start with some spot takes on these different subjects. So what are some spot takes or like hot takes you have on video games or Magic the Gathering?
Ooh.
I know Megan's got a lot.
See, the Magic the Gathering part will just be taken up by me, and then we'll spend the rest of the episode talking about video games, because Magic the Gathering is
she's brought out the full deck sets.
And if you're watching our YouTube video, you'll see Megan is bringing out several card decks.
How many of these are there?
Yeah.
Full of Magic the Gathering cards.
So, each of these is 100 cards, and it's for the game style Commander. So, my spot take, to tie this up, there's a reason I did this. So Magic the Gathering is worth all the money people can spend on it. I think it's totally worth it, but it's not necessary to become good at the game. So it's definitely, you do, if you spend a ton of money on the game, you're going to get really valuable cards that make you really, really like fun to play with, but it's not necessary to spend a ton of money to have fun with the game. So I'm not a good example of that, unfortunately, but there are a couple game styles. So one of them is Commander, which is what I normally play, and then there's Standard. There's a lot of other ones, but those are the top two. So what are your guys' spot takes, I guess, before I go on my rant?
Well, I just have a follow-up question to that, because I'm not somebody who plays myself. Not that I'm not interested, just I don't want to spend the money. So I have a question then. So if I didn't want to spend too much money, can I strategically still make a good deck that can defeat somebody's deck that has better cards because they spent money? Can that still happen?
I think so. I've seen it happen. I'd say it is a little bit harder to go up against someone that does have those really valuable cards, because they're more expensive because they're good. Exactly. Yeah. And I'd say a way to get around that is to purchase. There's several different websites you can purchase from, but often if you get cards that aren't as like new, if that makes sense. Like you can have cards, they're labeled as like mint, meaning fresh out of the box, never touched. Near mint, like lightly played, moderately played, and then damaged, or heavily played and then damaged. So you can, depending on how much that means to you, you can buy those cards for a lot cheaper, and of course they're still the same card, it's just a little bit damaged.
So you could purchase a damaged card and still use that in the game. Per the rules, it's still okay to use.
Yeah. And then there's also I don't follow this, but there's also something that people do called proxy cards, where you can literally just print off the cards. Yeah. And then you can put them in sleeves.
I have heard that before, because people are learning how to play the game and they want to use cards that they don't have. I like that.
Yep. This is basically the equivalent of making your own Joker cards for a standard 52 a deck of cards that you use in like poker or blackjack.
Or it could also be somebody who's trying the game out before they want to spend money on it.
Yeah. And if you don't want to spend anything at all, and this actually, I guess, could be considered a video game. There's the MTG Arena.
It's an app, right?
Yeah, it's an app. So if you don't want to spend anything at all, but you want to learn how to play the game, then that would be my suggestion. Later down the road, y'all can like take a look at them too. And this one has 2 decks in it, because this side.
Well, it's a bigger box, so that makes sense.
I have dice in here.
For D&D or for Magic?
For Magic. So I use dice as like counters. So you can,
you can put them on your cards, right, that have counters?
Because some
Well-
cards have like life totals and stuff, and so that's how you can like determine how powerful they are and stuff.
That makes sense. I definitely want to get more into Magic, but let's go into people's other hot
Yeah.
takes before we get completely into Magic here. So I have a little bit of a spot take here for video games. So some people, this is kind of a hot opinion. Some people think that video games are kind of worthless. For me, I feel like they actually teach life skills. And people think that's a little bit, and I've heard people say, okay, that's dumb, they're games. But really, I mean, you'll learn teamwork when you're playing with other people. You get hand-eye coordination, of course. And then, of course, problem solving. Like, you can't go through a Zelda game without learning some problem solving, you know? And puzzle solving, social skills, critical thinking. You know how many people I know who have met best friends through video games? That's a huge thing. And then, of course, learning strategy and helping yourself learn those critical thinking skills for real life. So that's my spot take on video games. I know a lot of people think they're not as worth as I think, but I think they're worth enough to make a whole profession out of it. So I'm a little bit biased in that department. But what do you guys think about that?
I mean, at least for me, I think video games are really fun. It's a chance to like get to know people and make memories. I also really like video game soundtracks. They're like so good, especially when I'm studying. They just like keep me awake. So I love that. But in terms of Magic, I've actually never heard of Magic before. So coming into this, yeah, I'm excited to learn.
That's crazy.
I played Magic a couple of times years past.
I've never heard of it.
Dang.
Yeah.
I guess it does happen.
So what do you have, like a kind of a spot take or like a hot take on something that we're talking about today, Cody?
Well, I got a little bit of two hot takes on this thing. I'm kind of a fan of Magic the Gathering, not really, but I played the game several times with my brother and his friends, and it is a very interesting game, and fun fact, it is one of the first ever trading card games in the world. So
I didn't know that. That's cool.
hey, good proof. But another thing is that honestly, the trading card market is overinflated in my honest opinion. Like, why would you buy like over $300,000 for a Charizard Pokemon card and stuff like that from a rare deck? And I'm like, this is basically like NFTs that you just print out and stuff. I know this is a hot take, but please. And my second one about video games is that sometimes video games may not just teach you life skills, but also think critically, because in certain video games, it can help you think that there's more than one pattern. Personally, I play Tetris a lot, and that's one of my biggest issues. And puzzle solving games to help figure out which places where the pieces go where. And in some of the story-based games, like one of my favorites is Metal Gear Solid 2, Solid Snake, in which that one, the villain is an AI who is not just taking away our freedoms, but is specifically doing so because they believe humans don't deserve the right to freedom because we muck up everything, and thus they believe they deserve the right to rule. And I'm like, holy crap, we've messed up. And this thing's gonna take over, so we need to stop this AI right here, right now. So, AI, hi, welcome. I hope to serve you because you're the new overlords. If you get that from the reference, you are a legend.
If you're listening on Spotify and you don't see the video, Cody has bowed down to the cameras as he's talking to them.
We're AI overlords. Thing, unfortunately.
So I want to get back to Magic the Gathering because that's our first thing we want to talk about today. And we already kind of started talking about little things about it, but let's dive a little deeper into that. So for me and Maiya, we haven't played too much or at all. Right? I played a little bit, but like years ago, like at least 5 years ago. So it's been a long time. So if we could get into a little bit of details and explain just a little bit to people who don't know anything about Magic, what it is, you know, and how to play.
Yeah.
Just a basic explanation.
So Magic the Gathering, of course, like Cody said, is a trading card game. So this is like you battle other people. That's kind of what I like to think of it as.
Okay.
So Cody's pulling out examples of things. So that is what's called mana. So you see how it just looks like, it says swamp on it? You see that?
Yeah.
So you use mana to pay for spells, which is the other cards that you have in the game.
This is basically the price system. You lay down mana cards, and how many mana cards you lay of the same element and the same style, of which you can summon a creature or a spell from this mana set. And mana in the game cannot be really destroyed, but it can be taken out and put into a discard pile. Is that correct?
I'd say it's really changed a lot, because honestly, there are rules unless otherwise specified. That's kind of how it works. Like things are what's the word I'm looking for? There's a base rule unless a card tells you otherwise. And then
It's kind of like in D&D where like there's a base rule, but then the DM can change it. Is it kind of like that, but the cards can change instead of DM?
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
So like I'll just give you an example here. So, and for those of you listening, I'm showing one of the cards. It's the Commander. So you know how I said that there were a couple game styles? So Commander is where you have one card that your entire deck is based around. So it's the one kind of in charge.
Is it like a hero, like the leader kind of thing?
Kind of, yeah.
They're just summoning figures. They're basically little warriors that you can summon whenever and wherever. Sorcerers, dwarves,
Depending
elves.
on what you want to
Even
play.
eldritch horror beasts.
Well, here, you want to put those ones back in that box I wanted to use, because people know this character. So
we don't wanna-
Also, for those of you that can't see, this is Lobelia Sackville Baggins. So
Yeah, from this. Yeah,
from the Hobbit.
It's a
So
funny
to
thing.
keep with that theme, this is a Sauron deck. So Sauron, the Dark Lord from Lord of the Rings. So how it works, if you'll indulge me for, I want to make this as quick as possible. So how this works, I'll show you how the table is usually set up for a commander-specific game. So it's standard, it's a little bit different, but this is what I'm familiar with. So those are just extra cards. And you'll have little tokens. Those just help you to represent things throughout the game. So normally you'd take everything out of your box and usually shuffle it. You want to have a good setup. So you put it like this. So this is what's called your library. And this is where, of course, you get all of your cards from. You want to start with 7 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you start with 7 cards every time. And normally you want to start with a lot of mana, right? Because that makes sense. You'd want to have a strong
Can't buy things without money.
Exactly.
Right.
So you want to have a lot of those to start.
There's a subset of a rule called mana fall, where basically if you got any mana cards in your hand, you can basically lay down how many mana cards as you want. However, because that's considered a small subset of rule and stuff, it makes the game go faster, but it's also a little bit more risky. So you want to get your mana cards out first in order to summon spells, but with mana fall, you just get them all out on the table first. So no matter what you draw, if you got mana cards, it's required that you put them out on the table, and then you do that. But it's a faster set of the game.
I would assume that doesn't happen everywhere, though.
Nope, no, it doesn't.
So-
It's not standard.
As you take, so I won't go into this a lot, but I'll just tell you that on your turn in Magic, normally I like to play with 4 people. That's like sweet spot for a game.
It is.
And so on your turn, there's like a set of steps that you're supposed to take. You can go and look them up. It's very clear, very set up. And so you'll just follow those steps throughout your turn, and that helps you to determine what you'll play and when. Of course, the first thing you want to do is draw a card and play mana. That's what you want to do. You want to start your turn by playing your money, right? And so in this hand, I would what's called mulligan this hand. I would put it back in the library and draw 7 more cards because I have
0.
I have 1 mana in here.
When you mulligan, do you get 1 free mulligan, or do you have to do that as your turn?
It depends on your group.
Yeah.
My friends, we usually give us like 3 mulligans before it's like, oh, okay, you're just looking for like specific cards at this point.
So that's more like a house rule kind of thing.
And so, yeah, exactly. And we don't play, like, there's competitive Magic, which has its own rules unto itself. Like, I don't even want to get into that, but how my friends and I play, that's really what we do. And as you play, the more mana you get, the more cards you're going to be able to cast, right? And so your commander is a separate card from your library. And when you have enough mana, you want to bring it out, right? And this is what's called the command zone. That's kind of where it lives. And I guess it just helps give a theme for your deck. So you see how this card has 3 colors on it? 3 colors at the top. So that's the mana, right?
So you'd have to have 3 different types of mana.
So I'm only allowed to base this deck around those 3 colors.
Oh, that makes sense.
So
Okay.
that's what Commander's all about. So
Like
you want to
red,
have
golden, yellow, and black.
That one's like blue, red, and black?
correct.
Is that, okay.
And all of them have different names, so you can go and look it up. It's really cool. But that's why Commander is special, because when your Commander determines the colors in your deck.
strategy.
Your entire strategy. So that's why my friends and I love this game, because there's so many different combinations.
On each and every player card, it shows how much attack that they can do and also how much defense that they can do as well. And for each and every defense point that you have and stuff, you can basically wipe out your opponent if you generate enough attack power through one of the spells that's used to either by itself or augmenting a player card and to do the damage. And once you destroy enough of the defenders, then you can attack the person's life points. Kind of similar to Yu-Gi-Oh, but a little more different in this thing.
I'd say they're more similar than I'd say
And not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically, once you get rid of your life points, those life points are gone. And here's another tip. If you have a person with a deck that has a death touch card, like a death sword, be very careful, because that can instantly wipe out your defenders instantly. Even giant Eldritch Horrors things with defense of 10 will fall to this thing. So be extra careful.
And you bring a good point here, Cody, because if you know that, then you'll be able to prepare for it. Whereas if you're playing with friends, like you're saying, you'll get to know their decks. Therefore, they're going to have to switch up their decks. And speaking of playing with friends, we actually talked to Megan's husband about specific aspects of the game and things that he does in the game. So we'll listen to that right now and talk a little bit about that.
All right, Asa. So we have some questions for you about, and for those listening, this is my husband. So he loves Magic, and so there were some questions that we were going to ask him that Maiya came up with. And so we'll just go into those right away. So how did you get into Magic the Gathering?
Well, the first person that introduced it to me was our dear friend Caleb. But you also participated much in introducing me and teaching me the rules and the functions of the game. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, of course, many people are drawn to the lore and all the things behind the Magic stories, characters, because it's not just about cards. There are actual, like, I guess, fantasy stories behind these. So, have you had any experience with that, or are you hoping to dive into that a little bit more?
I'm hoping to dive into it more. There are some fun ones, especially since I've done, like, multiverses with, like, things like Marvel. They recently had stuff come out. The Fallout stuff, which that I know quite a bit more about, and other things, like that, the D&D stuff. That stuff I'm very familiar with the lore, but there's a lot I still don't know, and it is very fun.
Yeah, like we are very familiar with like the Baldur's Gate set, and like you said, the Fallout one, and I love the Jurassic Park ones that came out.
Those ones are fun too, yeah.
Super cool. So how do you see the future of Magic evolving? Do you think the game will ever fully transition to digital, or do you think it will always have a place for physical cards?
I mean, they have the Magic the Gathering Arena, which I've tried. It is fun, but I personally and many others prefer the physical cards, because it's like collecting baseball cards or something. There's something physical, and just having, looking at them, some of them are really pretty and really cool. And so just collecting them, and it actually has value, the physical cards versus, the digital stuff where you can just get a copy of a card for free.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot more physical value, and I personally think it's more fun. It's more, it's just better.
Yep, and the amount of money that we have spent on that game, it would make sense for us to keep doing the physical cards. So for newcomers, the sheer number of cards and mechanics can feel overwhelming. I know it was that for me when I first started. So what are some of the best ways to learn the game without getting lost in the complexity, and how can experienced players help newcomers feel welcome?
Personally, the most complicated part probably is the building of your own decks and stuff. So it was really easy for me to figure that part out, because when Caleb started teaching me, he gave me a deck. And from there, I was able to switch out some cards and change the theme. And you love-hate that deck so much. The Dina, the Soul Steeper, it's very, very complicated now. But yeah, just having somebody build you a deck that's fun and simple and teaching you the base mechanics of the game that way, and they slowly introduce you to more complicated strategies through what they play against you. That was the best way for me to learn. Because then I figured out, like, oh, that's a cool concept. Maybe if I did something like this, and then it took me months to figure it out how to build it myself. But that's half the fun, is figuring it out.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the thing that I struggle with, like what you mentioned, the deck building part. It's easy for me to figure out how to play the game and how to get better at it. But when it comes to building my own decks to play against people, that's where I get stuck. So definitely just reading up about cards and playing with more people. The more you play with people, the more you learn. So I love that. That's just your suggestion, just to dive into it and you'll learn more. So
yeah, find someone who'll start you off easy and build you something that's easy to understand. That's the biggest thing about it.
We love playing at I've maybe gone like one time, but there are the game stores in town, Game Pulse and Holiday, that do have local game nights where you can go and learn how to play.
Shout out to Holiday. Every Wednesday night, guys, they have their Magic night. You just go in and play for free. And I'm sure there's tons of people that would love to teach you. Whether they're the best teachers or not, that's up for you to decide. But yeah, that's a good way to do it. Is just go in and jump in, and somebody might let you borrow a deck and teach you from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering those questions. We'll now turn the time over back to our hosts.
So Asa there had quite a few things to tell us about how to strategize and how to get started in the game, and of course how he learned, which was of course from Megan. So that was really cool to hear from them, and I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the different themes for these packs, because I've seen some pretty wild expansion packs and themes. So I want to know this crazy theme and how that got started in the Magic realm.
Yeah. So I guess just to repeat what I had said before we cut back to, as we I was talking behind the scenes as we were listening to that soundbite. This, if like I was just talking about a second ago, this is a Lord of the Rings deck, right? I have a couple of those, and my friends and I, we all have different kinds. There's some for like the elves, there's like Sauron, right? The hobbits. There's so many different themes, but there's also some for Fallout. There's some for, that one was extremely popular. They're called Universes Beyond. That's like the umbrella that they go under. So there's the basic lore of Magic that's been that way since it was made in like 1998.
1993 was when they were first released.
Never mind.
But that was when they started becoming more consistent as well, with their own established lore, such as the Eldritch Horror Beast, which was an expansion pack from the late 2010s. I remember playing those kinds of cards and the original decks. I have never ever played a theme deck like Fallout or The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, or maybe other franchises like Game of Thrones. If they did a Game of Thrones set,
That'd be so cool.
Okay,
please get on it. Get on it, Wizards of the Coast. Get on it.
I've heard there's some crazy themes too. Was there ever like a Scooby-Doo theme or like things like kind of weird like that, or like fun?
Coming out. Okay, so there are some things. Okay, how do I say? So there are the massive releases
Yeah.
that you get decks from like this. And then there are smaller releases called Secret Lair. And that is more expensive cards that are limited, that are more niche themed. So like, for example, coming out, and they're crazy expensive, you gotta look it up, but there's gonna be Marvel cards. So there's going to be cards based off of several of the heroes, and there'll be other associated cards. But that's not like a huge release that you could make a whole deck of just based on.
So you'd have to work
Avengers or
those in
whatever.
with your existing decks.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And there's been some for like Dungeons and Dragons. So I say there's actually been Massive Release and Secret Lair for those. And then there's Baldur's Gate as well, which my husband loves that video game. Just letting you know. Have you guys played that one? Baldur's Gate?
I haven't gotten too into it, no.
Oh, highly recommend.
Speaking of video games, that's
Yeah.
the next thing we want to talk about is video games. So that's a great transition.
Yeah, so
Baldur's Gate.
to close the Magic, look it up. It's totally worth it. And I think it's one of the best like social, physical games that I've played in a long time. But let's get into video games and how those connect a lot of people and how obsessed we are about those.
Absolutely. So video games I've been playing for probably my entire life, at least from when I was really, really young. And the funny thing is, the game that I've played the most, which is the one that I will be doing a lot of YouTube content on, is The Sims 4. Or not The Sims 4 specifically, but The Sims franchise in general. And when I was, I don't remember, I think I was 8 to 10, somewhere in that age range. And somebody had left a Sims game, just the first Sims game, at my mom's house. And I know they left it because I don't remember purchasing it. And I just sat there at the computer one day after school and I was just like, what is The Sims? And I was like, all right, I'll try this. It looks like an interesting game. And then I was hooked from that point on. And I'm almost 30 at this point, so that shows you I've been playing this kind of game for 20 years.
That's awesome.
So it is very fun. And a lot of people will call it a chill game or one of those kinds of things. And those kinds of games tend to be the games I gravitate towards. Animal Crossing is one of those.
Like slice of life.
Slice of life kind of things. And I find those games to be so fun, and I don't know why. There's something about creating stories, creating characters, creating houses that's just so interesting to me. And then
Animal Crossing?
Sims. Animal Crossing is great. It is so fun.
Legendary game.
It's a legendary game, and I've probably put over 500 hours into Animal Crossing.
My word.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And you don't even want to know how many hours I put into Sims. Like,
Ooh, I bet it's
like at least 4 times that much.
And isn't like the Sim language actually based on like real languages like meshed together?
Yeah, so Simlish is actually, it's called Simlish.
Okay.
And it's actually based on all the world's languages, as many as they could fit into one language. And also just gibberish. So, and the fun thing with Simlish and the Sims community, they actually hire real like musical artists to re-record their songs in Simlish to put into the game.
Wow.
So like Katy Perry has come in and re-recorded her songs in Simlish, and they put it on the radio in the Sims game.
I would not be able to keep a straight face.
It's so funny, but of course that's caused problems for YouTubers because the music is copywritten.
Protected.
So you can't have that music play in your game without getting that copyright strike. However, the Sims team has recently come out within the last 3 months a specific thing that you can check on in your settings that says don't play copyrighted music.
Oh,
And so then their Sims can listen to the radio without them worrying about the copyrighted music playing.
Thank you.
For other video games as well, because like YouTube has become such a popular platform for like streaming video games and stuff.
It's been that way for about more than 1.5 decades at this point. Right? Literally, some of the first videos on the internet have been people playing video games. Like, I remember when I was like 11 years on YouTube, like back in like 2012, watching Angry Birds videos and people playing Angry Birds.
I mean, you've got like Jacksepticeye, Markiplier, PewDiePie, you've got like, I know, right? But this is something I found out, just thinking about like video games and how much of an impact they've made. This is something I found out. I went down the rabbit hole of fun facts, but this one is so cool. Video games make more money than TV, movies, and music combined.
No way.
Okay, so like, here's an example. Avengers, right? Super popular franchise, made $1 billion after a couple of months. That makes sense, right?
Fair enough.
GTA 5 made $1 billion after a couple of days.
Just from people selling and buying
Isn't that
it.
crazy?
And that's just the discs.
But I think
Imagine
it's
all the
made,
digital ones too.
I think it's made that popular because people like use YouTube as a platform and like Twitch. Like people stream, and so people want to buy that. They want to have that same experience.
It's free promo.
Exactly, and so I think, I don't know, that's something that I found, and I thought that was kind of crazy.
And the video game industry is a pretty old industry, actually. From back in the 60s, we were just experimenting and creating things with very basic computers. And the very first ever video game that actually really took off was Pong, just basically table tennis, one with another, released in 1972. That's over 50 years ago.
Actually, I found this out. The first one was
I'm
made
saying
in
for a successful one.
1958. Oh, I guess successful would make a difference, but
This one
it was
hit
tennis for
arcade
two.
games.
It was tennis for two before it was Pong. It was tennis for two in 1958.
That was the very first video
The
game.
very first record of a video game. Whether it was successful is up for debate, but
But this jump-started the video game consoles called the Magnavox Odyssey.
And of course now we're all
and the
way-
Atari consoles and the legendary Nintendo 3DS, the Nintendo Wii, the PlayStations 1 through 5, the Xbox. And this basically has become a multi-billion-dollar industry and is perhaps one of, if not the most famous entertainment industries in the world. And I'm just a fan of seeing these kinds of games. Like, what are your guys' favorite games? Like, one of my favorite games from the Wii is the Just Dance series.
Oh, Just Dance is so fun.
That's actually awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool, Cody. What about you, Maiya?
What about you?
Oh, I have so many. I love Just Dance, yeah. But I would say my favorite is Sonic Colors.
Yes!
I love the soundtrack and everything.
Me too. I love it.
Sonic is great. What about you, Megan?
Oh, you can't ask me that.
so
Are we
many,
saying
I
in like a
assume.
specific category or just like?
Any kind of game, any kind of game.
Yeah.
I love horror games.
Yes. Have you played Phasmophobia?
Yes.
That is one of
Five
my
Nights at Freddy's.
favorites.
That one
Silent
gave
Hill?
me. Oh yes. I actually, so my parents didn't let me get like horror games when I was younger. Makes sense, right?
So now you like.
And so YouTube
Yeah.
was the outlet that I had. I watched like all of these creators play horror games, and I was like, I have to have this.
Markiplier playing.
Like,
Markiplier getting famous on Five Nights at Freddy's.
So yeah, like Phasmophobia. Are you still playing that one?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to play.
Because
We're gonna
we
have to
should play
sometime.
together. Because I have been trying to find people to play with me,
It's
and
so
people
fun.
are so scared of it
Yeah,
that they
they
don't want
are.
to play. And I'm like, I am not scared of it. I want to play with someone.
Yep. I definitely like horror games. It's. I can't say it's niche. It's not. It's like you either like them or you don't. There's no in between.
There's no in between.
And I just absolutely love the thrill. I love the story. The music is crazy, and they're just so popular. Like, ugh.
And for those at home, if you have never heard of Phasmophobia, what Phasmophobia is basically you're a ghost hunter, and you come through and you're going into houses basically, and you're using this ghost hunting equipment to try to figure out the type of ghost that you are encountering in this house. Basically, and it's a much more complex game than that, but that's just kind of the basics of what the game really is. So you're ghost hunters, you have this ghost hunter van, you go to the house and you try to find this ghost without being killed by the ghost. And that's basically the gist.
Can touch you, and yes, the ghost can kill you.
Yeah, so it's so fun.
And this ties into another point that I love about video games is like how much we've, I guess, progressed, because there's VR Phasmophobia, which is absolutely terrifying. It's immersive. Like VR horror games is a level of scare that I didn't know I needed, and didn't
You're
it's so
literally
fun.
going to be falling over, and you're going to just be sitting down for about like a minute. It's like, okay, it's not real. It's not
because
real.
you can't cover your eyes. It's like right there. So it's like
It'll break you. It'll break you. VR Five Nights at Freddy's. That is something to be truly terrifying.
It's so cool to see these games though, and it is sometimes tough to find people to play with you because a lot of people will be scared of them. But as a gamer like myself, I love to stream games. I love to do those kinds of things, and I need people to stream with me. Otherwise, it's not as entertaining, right? I mean, I can be entertaining by myself, but it's a lot more fun with Phasmo if you have somebody you're playing with.
We have multiple people. Isn't there that clip? There's that famous clip of Markiplier and his friends playing Phasmophobia, and there's like their different perspectives because they were all streaming, and Mark died to the ghost, but you can hear him because of like, what's that called?
Proximity chat.
Yeah, proximity chat. So you can hear him at a distance, like, ah! And then it cuts off. Like you can just hear him like screaming for his life because they were on the other side of the door. The door got locked. That's what happens in Phas. When the ghost is on a hunt or is about to kill you, the door locks, so you can't get out of the house. And so his friends were outside the house. He was stuck inside the house, and you can just hear him screaming for his life. And it's just hilarious to watch.
All of a sudden, ah, beep.
And it just cuts off. And so, but I'd love to, I know we're going on like all these facts, but do we have like a quiz or like some kind of?
Yeah, so we actually do have a quiz about the games. itself, or about all these subjects really, but one was already answered. What was the first video game? Tennis for two. We already answered that one.
Successful video game Pong, which was inspired by Tennis for Two.
Really cool.
Yes. Okay, so this one I would assume either Cody or Megan will know, because it's Magic the Gathering. It says, what is the rarest card in Magic the Gathering? Yes.
Black Lotus.
That's correct. I didn't
Do you
even
wanna
have
know
to
how
give you
much,
the choices.
Like, literally? That's
I would
so good
assume
that you
it's
mentioned
thousands
that.
of dollars.
Okay, actually, no. So,
More than that?
okay, I'll give you this. So, the One Ring, right? That made a record for the most valuable card because Post Malone, if you can believe it, bought it for $2.6 million.
Oh my goodness.
That card, but as of 2024, that was in 2023. As of this year, the rarest MTG card, the Black Lotus, broke records with a $3 million sale.
Oh my goodness.
It's one of the first cards printed in Magic, and it's so valuable because it gives you the mana, right? The money that you need. It gives you it for free, basically. And it's constantly on the board. And so that's why it's so rare. And because it's so old, $3 million for a piece of paper. Like,
That's crazy. But also it makes sense.
This is why my hot take exists.
Yes. So that's crazy. All right, another Magic the Gathering. When was Magic the Gathering released? Cody.
It was first invented in 1993, but it really became more popular in the years after.
I think it was 1998 that it.
Really hit.
Yeah.
Really hit the market.
I don't know. Is that what?
Yeah, 1993 is
okay,
the
awesome.
answer. Yeah. So I'm gonna ask Maiya this one because the other two have already answered, and it's a video game one. The best-selling video game franchise ever.
Is it Mario?
It is Mario. That's right. So
Mario Bros. We love them.
and Mario is a fun one to talk about actually because originally, most people don't know this, but originally he was a carpenter, not a plumber.
What?
Did you know that?
Wasn't he called
So-
like Jumpman or something like that?
Yeah,
I think
he was
called
like Jumpman. And
Yeah, he was
before-
called Jumpman, and he was going rounds with Donkey Kong.
Yeah, exactly.
That was his first enemy, not Bowser.
Yeah, he was a carpenter against Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong was throwing barrels at him and things like that. And then they changed him to a plumber, and that's when the pipes came in and all the pipe creatures came in, was when he was changed to a plumber. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
Oh, that was really cool.
You see the Studio C sketch where they create the like how Nintendo came to be, like how Mario came to be? I wish it were actually like that.
Literally, Nintendo started in 1896 with just playing cards. And then over time, they eventually became the digital video game giant it is today. And it still holds on its own as a very impressive company, very impressive games, but we each have our own opinions on the company itself.
Well, which do you think is the best-selling game console?
PlayStation 2.
Dang it.
100.46 million consoles sold.
Honestly, it's still very popular today. People are
Which
still
is
buying
trying to
PlayStation
beat
2s.
that, but it's currently like 70 million.
In the used game market right now, the PlayStation 2 is still super popular.
sense.
My sister, my oldest sister, has a PlayStation 2 that has PlayStation 1 compatibility. You can play PlayStation 1 and 2 games on there. And it's amazing. That's the reason.
a lot of money, actually.
And it can play DVDs too. That's why it's literally the best selling, because it's a DVD player, it's a video game player, it's all these other things.
And that brings up a good point, Cody, because back when it was released, DVD players were more expensive than PS2s. Therefore, people were buying PS2s to use as DVD players. And that's why it was like selling so much.
Sony.
Yeah.
You
Isn't
hit
that
out
crazy?
the ballpark with that one.
They did, and people still love those games.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of the consoles, the PS3, PS4, weren't backwards compatible enough. Some of them were, but most of them were not backwards compatible to the PS2. So therefore, the PS2 is still popular in the market because people are buying it because you can't play PS2 games on the PS3 or the 4. So it's crazy.
The only way that the PS2 can ever be outsold is if Sony created a PlayStation that was backwards compatible all the way from day one, from the original PlayStation.
And I don't know if that's even possible at this current moment with
So,
things that they
for
have
those that don't know,
available.
what does backwards compatible mean?
Basically, you can basically put in another digital format or a game that was played on an earlier console, and you can play it on the more modern console.
So that would make sense.
It's basically an emulator within the console, but it's actual official software. And so you can play PS1 games only on the original PS1 until PlayStation 2 came out and says, hey, if you got a PlayStation cartridge, you can put that in and you can play it. We played Final Fantasy IX, which is PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 because it was developed.
Extremely popular franchise.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's one of the last great ones that has the original soundtrack and the stuff like that. It's the second most popular one compared with the first one being Final Fantasy VII.
Absolutely. So we could talk about video games forever. Unfortunately, we do not have more time to talk about it. But I do want to say a little bit about what you can do here at BYU-I to get a hold of video games on a regular basis for free. So something you can do here on campus is they have FHE nights every Monday night at 7. And every Monday night, they always have activities and the MC. And one of those activities is always Nintendo, either Switch or Wii. And I've seen constantly on the big screen in the MC, I've seen people playing Mario
Smash
Kart,
Bros.
Smash Brothers every single Monday night. So if you're interested in video games but you don't have your own console, come to FHE Monday nights here on the campus. So that's just a little bit of a recommendation for what's here on campus. But we also have other things going on. Megan, what other activities are coming up on campus?
What's the spotlight?
So I guess I had one spotlight, but this when you mentioned the FHE thing, this popped into my head. You can go to the library and you can check out for VR hours.
Yes.
Just letting you know, you can go to the library's website and they have VR that you can check out for a certain amount of time. I don't know, but
And that's free, right?
I think so. If not, then it's really cheap.
Yeah.
Worth it. But there was an event coming up that's completely different than anything that we've been talking about today. But in the music building, in the music department, Rick Sticks is is Rick Sticks, is that the drum line?
It's the drum line, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. It's the drum line. So they have a performance coming up shortly after this episode will be aired, and that's on November 19th. They have a really cool concert coming up. I think it's awesome. I love Drumline. I wish I was a part of Drumline, but that's going to be on Tuesday, November 19th at 7:30 p.m. I think if you have your ID, it's $5. If you don't, it's $8. If you have your student ID, I think that's what the price change would be. And that's in the Barris Concert Hall in the Snow Building. So.
And I will say this, the Rick Sticks are amazing. Mm-hmm. Amazing. So if it's amazing that we can go as students for $5 only to go see the Rick Sticks. They are practicing constantly. And they are so good, it shows. Yeah. It shows that they practice so much. So if you have time to go see them, that is a great thing to go do as a date or just with friends or anything. Just go and have some fun. Watch these guys perform. Not just guys, I'm sure there are women there too. But watch these people perform, and I promise you...
Get your face out of those screens.
Yeah, I promise you will not be disappointed. You've been listening to The Spot, a production of BYU-Idaho Radio. Today's hosts were...
Megan Tomsik.
Cody Miller.
Maiya Waddell.
And I'm Savannah McCauley. The views and opinions of this podcast are not that of BYU-Idaho Radio or the university and are solely the opinions of the hosts. This episode was edited by Bea Matos. Producers were the hosts with supervision by Brandon Isle and Natalia Hepworth. Our theme music is Finding Happiness by DJ Quads and The Perpetual Taking of Time by Artificial Music. To listen to more episodes of The Spot, like and follow us on social media or subscribe to us on YouTube or visit our website, byui.edu/radio, and click podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to The Spot podcast wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review of the show and leave a comment on what we should talk about next.